Welcome to the Legendary Upside podcast. My name is Pat Rain. You can follow all of my content at legendaryupside.com. With me today, Sackreligious, Kyle Dvorchak, Daniel Racz. We're going to be talking through the Legendary Upside best ball rankings. Guys, how's it going?
Oh, it's good. Are we ready for the season to be here? I feel like especially with the final week of preseason, I know that some of the starters, they still play in because it used to be 4, now it's 3. Sometimes they play 3. This is the warm-up game, yada, yada. Let's get some results, man. Let me see a 40% route rate for Roma Dunze and completely implode already. I'm ready.
Yeah, I need week 1 to be here so we can take week 1 victory laps. That's what we do it all for. It's not about winning the money. It's about victory lapping week 1 after a very
It's not.
minute.
Victory lapping week 1. First of all, I don't know that I've ever been able to victory lap week 1. When you focus on the end of the season, it really does hurt your week 1 victory lap equity.
Kareem, do you remember, how did you feel last year? I was talking to Rotopat about this. Breece Hall gets like 10 carries in week 1 and he goes for 127 yards.
I felt good about that. Yeah,
you feel good about that? Okay.
Yeah, I felt good about that. Did you guys, how many carries do you think Breece Hall had in week 18 last year?
Oh, Christ. I know almost exactly the answer, so I'll let them guess first.
Had in week 18 or by
in week 18? Not by, in week 18.
26.
23?
Wasn't it literally 37?
37 carries.
Yep.
I just writing up his legendary upside scenario, and it helps when you've had 37 carries in a single game. It makes it easier to envision the upside. Yeah. Anyway, I'm in on Breece Hall. We'll actually start there. So I've got this normally we talk through the rankings having already just made a bunch of changes. Time is getting tighter. So we're doing the pod with those changes kind of going to be we're going to make those changes after the pod as opposed to before the pod. So the rankings that I share are, going to get tweaked. So when you see them, when you watch this, they won't look exactly like this because we're going to make a few tweaks after. But
this is a sausage getting made episode. And as it turns out, most of the sausage getting made is just screaming at each other.
Well, we'll see. But Breece Hall is a guy that we've had behind Bijan for most of the summer because everyone else had him behind Bijan. But that is flipped as their ADPs have become very similar. We've gone ahead and put Breece ahead, which is the way it should have been ranked probably the whole time by the market. We don't want to fade Bijan, though. Bijan, I think, is a pretty strong pick. But I do feel that Breece is the better pick. This is not one we're making a change on right now, but one that we already made a change on a few days ago or a week ago-ish. Thoughts on those two running backs and us now having Breece ahead now that the ADPs are tied?
Yeah, I think we all agreed that this was how we would have played it the whole time. Most of the reason why we had Bijan ahead of Breece was ADP, and if you're drafting for the entire summer with us, we assume that you're probably drafting a lot of teams and you're taking a portfolio approach. And so we want to be cognizant on, getting good prices on players and not taking enormous fade stances on players in the first round unless we're supremely confident that that player is a bad pick. And we don't think that Bijan's a bad pick, which is why we weren't willing to flip that earlier. But now that we're here in the home stretch, and I think, all of us want to have more Breece than Bijan. Really, if you ask me personally, like what I'm doing, I'll probably sacrifice a little bit of my Amon-Ra exposure for the sake of Breece and Bijan. And when I say sacrifice a little bit of it, I mean like down to 7% or 6.5%. I'm not getting crazy, but I do want to be a little bit overweight on Breece. I also just think the first round is very good this year. And last year, there were spots like Eckler and Kelsey where I was more willing to take some fade stances, which is how I ended up on like 20% Tyreek Hill last year, which is pretty aggressive. This year, not really getting that aggressive in the first round.
Well, to the Amon-Ra point, he's actually rising. He's flipped Jefferson. Normally with this stuff, we have followed the market here, but we haven't followed the market on Amon-Ra versus Jefferson. I think in Parks, it's kind of a late flip. We also Jefferson's been someone I've wanted more of all offseason. I'm at 9%. I'm a little light on St.Brown. Not that I want to have a fade on St.Brown, but Jefferson is the best wide receiver in the league. And so it's tough for me not to just if we look back on guys that really should have been in like the top 3, top 4, Jefferson and Breece are probably the two where I go like, in retrospect, we could easily be like, why didn't we take the best wide receiver and the best running back in the league in the top 2 picks? Like that's,
that's how I feel as well. The one thing I'm most confident in is Jefferson being the best receiver in the league. Obviously, there are cases for Tyreek. I know Jacob thought that Garrett Wilson could reach that echelon this year, but I'm that confident that Jefferson is that guy based on what he's put on tape. I know Amon-Ra will probably never be the best receiver in the league. And when I think we can be that confident in the player take and people have portfolios that are close to even already, it's good to now push it. And I'm at already up to 12% Jefferson. I was at 10 before, and now I've gotten it up, and I feel great. Hopefully get it to around 14%.
One thing that I've noticed, so we look in is we kind of go down here a little bit. Thoughts on Deebo Samuel, who we have fallen behind ADP on as like the Aiyuk. I feel like we did a good job here of kind of following the news around on this. Deebo jumped up and he was going at like the 1-2 turn in a lot of drafts. Might not have been reflected in his actual ADP, but in the draft rooms, you were seeing him go at the 1-2 turn like pretty regularly at the height of Aiyuk is going to Pittsburgh. And we were good. Like we were good with that. We had him pretty high up in the rankings, like right behind, I think ahead of Jonathan Taylor. Like I think we had him at like 15 at that time. But now it looks like Aiyuk is not going to get traded, and that should come with some kind of discount on Deebo, but that hasn't really, the market hasn't pulled back from that. Are you guys feeling like you don't want to be fading Deebo to close out drafts? Like, I don't know that the market's going to come back to us on this. We're just going to end up with like light on Deebo. Is that okay?
Yeah, I agree with both of the parts you said. 3 spots for a first round pick or I guess second round pick is a lot to move on. We're not getting any more news. It's the absence of news that will continue to happen. 3 spots is a pretty big chunk of like draft capital. If you were putting auction dollars this high, that's a lot to move in 2 weeks, probably 2 weeks by the time you're hearing this. I think we're going to end up, maybe it comes down to another 2 picks, but I think that number is still going to be negative in terms of us being somewhere behind his ADP through the rest of 2 weeks of the summer. Like you said, that's fine with me. I don't think he's the best receiver on his team. So I'm fine with saying, unless he falls, and we don't think there's much time left for him to fall, the guy who's better on his team goes after him. And we are, in turn, relatively high on Brandon Aiyuk,
right,
assuming Brandon Aiyuk is on the team. But it seems incredibly likely.
What are the odds at this point that he's not?
That he's not on the team?
Yeah.
Sub 1%.
So I was going to say 3, I think was my number.
I'd put it between like 1 and 3, yeah.
Yeah, it's a number that like is
small,
closer to a rounding error than it is to something we should account for.
Yeah. So that's how we're playing it. We're playing. You know what? I would not be shocked if Deebo's a 3rd round pick for like 3 days at the very end of drafts. Like Aiyuk signs, because why hasn't Aiyuk signed? I think at this point, like he doesn't want to show up to the preseason training camp period. Like just sign after it's all done. Would be my guess. I don't know. I obviously have no idea really, but it's a possibility that that's what he's doing, right? And then he signs, everything's good, and then before the season, this does get priced in, and like maybe overly priced in. So I'm okay. I'm okay, kind of saying I'm gonna take a little bit more Nico, Waddle, Achane. I've been trying to get more Achane recently, especially as kind of running back prices move up generally. I think taking him in the 2nd round is pretty nice. And then, yeah, we get bailed out by people overly pricing in Aiyuk signing and Deebo falling to like the early 3rd.
I think the one thing is we like the people who go ahead of him. If we were like, there's a clear fade ahead of him, we should flip that. That's an easy one to flip. We really like Achane. We really like Waddle. We really like Nico. I think maybe the only one we could say is like, if you guys wanted to get more in line with ADP, we're 2.5 ahead on Olave and 3 behind on Deebo. We could flip those 2. I agree. I want to be taking Achane though. I want to be taking Waddle. So that's the only.
Yeah, I'd be fine to flip him over Olave. Just the vibe.
That's all I have though. I don't want to keep moving that up.
So bad.
Yeah, man.
Olave's a good player though, so he's been a tricky one for me to think through all summers. Like really good player, decent enough quarterback play. Not a ton of target competition, but he has been falling. So I actually don't mind moving him down like another spot.
Yeah, you can get Olave falling all the way back to the 2-3 turns sometimes. It's rare that he makes it all the way to the turn, but I've had a couple teams where I end up with like CeeDee Lamb, Olave, Devontae Adams, and get that week 17 stack with Olave and Adams, and that's pretty nice. That's another Adams has been falling as well, but those are two that have kind of been sliding here.
Yeah, I've
noticed. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I think Kupp and Kyron have been ones that I've regularly seen go higher. Aiyuk in the early third feels like a blessing, especially with how you can play George Pickens in the fifth. If we're this confident simultaneously in the trade happening less than 5% of the time and in the earlier prices being correct, because Pickens was a early fourth round pick and Aiyuk was a mid to late second round pick. If you thought those prices were efficient, you can just bet on that outcome, taking them together. Early third, early fifth.
I did that today. Really nice. Yeah, you shared a team. You shared that you were doing that, and I thought that was a really good idea. I ended up my latest Best Ball Mania team. Let's see. Let me pull up the board. I was in the one hole, and so I went McCaffrey, Achane, Aiyuk, and then Amari and Pickens, Deontay, Ladd, Addison. Ended up going 3 quarterbacks. Got Justin Fields at the 18-12. That's pretty fun. To go with Pickens. Let's go. But yeah, Pickens and Aiyuk they're correlated. They're positively correlated. You're hoping that Aiyuk signs in San Francisco.
And even if he ends up in Pittsburgh, it's not ideal for their ADPs. But then you have Justin Fields, and like the worst case is you have a premium double stack that could hit in the playoff leagues.
Yeah, that's true. I have Purdy and CMC. And then I have Aiyuk with one of those 2 quarterbacks, so it could be okay. Zach, were you going to say something or not?
No. I mean, this is why we said that, back when the trade rumors were at their highest, we said, you can scoop Aiyuk when he falls and kind of stand off on Pickens and wait to see, because you didn't really gain anything by taking Pickens because he wasn't really falling. He was just sitting where he was. Yeah. And now here we are, and Pickens is falling, even though the trade rumors have like died down. So you stood to risk a lot more by taking a falling Pickens than you did taking a falling Aiyuk. And so that was kind of the whole thesis there, and it played out pretty well for us that way.
Cooper Kupp continues to rise up. He's up to 22 in ADP. We've fallen behind now. I think I'm okay. I'm down to move him up a little bit more, but I don't know. I mean, it's like what is driving the rise at this point?
What's driving the rise is I've seen a lot of people taking Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams together. So people are taking Cooper Kupp in the second to be able to take Kyron Williams in the third.
Yeah, I don't hate that, but it's not a reason to pull up Kupp, I don't think.
Right. That's how I feel as well.
Maybe move him up a couple more spots, but yeah, he's rocketing up. Let's see. The Amari and Pickens area is one I wanted to touch on. I mean, the Pickens stuff, like we were kind of out at the early fourth round price, late third round price that he had risen up to once the Aiyuk risk, became a factor there. And we brought him down to about, 47-ish in the ranks. Kind of been at that spot for a while now. But that's where he's at. His ADP is down to 47. And I'm seeing him in the fifth, like frequently. The other guys that I'm seeing, and I guess this kind of brings a larger conversation now about this kind of round 4, round 5, really round 3 to round 6 kind of part of the draft where we're seeing some real shuffling. We're seeing Pacheco rise up a lot. He's up to 32 in ADP, become a huge fade for us, which I'm totally fine with, frankly. But Daniel, victory lap on you want to take a quick victory lap on this? You've been
I wasn't right enough on Pacheco. I didn't think the fish would go that far. I in May said he's going to be I said he's going to be a top 40 pick. We should at least try and brace for that. Then I was saying he'll be a 3-4 turn pick. And in the article I wrote about 2 weeks ago that's up on the site, I said I think he closes at ADP 32.5. He's going to get closer to the 2-3
he's
turn.
32.9, so far so good.
We have 2 more weeks for people to draft the Chiefs lead back. This player will be closer to the second round than the 3-4 turn. So I was not aggressive enough on that stance somehow.
We'll talk Jaylen Warren in a little bit, but one of the conversations that went on in the Discord between us was me saying we should try and get a lot of value on Jaylen Warren, and Pat saying like, but I want to draft a lot of Jaylen Warren. And now I'm realizing that I just did the exact opposite of that with Pacheco, where you 100% convinced me that Pacheco's ADP would rise a lot. I believed that he would end maybe not this high, but higher. And then I went, yeah, but I don't want to draft him, so I'm not going to, even though all of my logic was born here is like, let's extract value. And then we had Pacheco, who you've been spot on with this kind of stuff. I believed that he would rise, and I went, I'm good, thanks. And
that's kind of how I played it. I'm at 3%, which honestly is probably, which means I was once at 6, probably, because I drafted him in like 3 weeks.
Yeah, but I deserve to take an L on this one in terms of process. I should have. Yeah. I mean, I knew what happened. I knew what was going to happen because Daniel's been all over this stuff pretty remarkably.
We communicated it though. We communicated it, and we were pretty close to ADP for much of his rise up through the 4th, and then around mid-4th we kind of waved goodbye.
Yeah,
I think rankings wise we played it pretty well, but it really is because of Daniel, because none of us, I don't think, were really drafting him.
Yeah. I wish I pushed the hold line a little more. I'm at 5.8% now. Okay. I wish it was wrong. Like James Conner, I think we communicated really well, especially due to Coach Speak Index, and just like, hey, the Cardinals are saying this is our starter, not a 1A. Right. This is just one.
We didn't mess around with that once.
Yeah.
Once
and I got to 20% Conner, and I'm going to take 0 for the rest of it. I'm down like 15% now. I'll probably end at 12 to 11%, but mostly in the 8th round. So that's when I feel good. I think everyone that has Pacheco will probably end up like 2 to 4%, maybe 2 to 5, but toward the late 4th, which is a nice price. If you can get him at 3-4 turn, I honestly don't hate that. I wouldn't really give a huge sign off, but I understand it at least in the mid 3rd when you're passing up on like any wideout through Zay Flowers. I think that's really tough to stomach. And Zay's now going in the 4th.
I agree. Yeah, to me, he's kind of in that Derrick Henry zone where like he just doesn't represent a good good range of outcomes for the price in this game, which is going to be highly variant. And like, there's some universes where we just take a big old L on Pacheco, but like, it's a lot to pay for a running back with like an okay profile, in an environment where we really do have a hard time kind of staying even at wide receiver. And frankly, there's just a lot of other better deep threats. The quarterbacks are way cheaper than they were last year. Tight ends are way cheaper than they were last year. Like, getting one of these guys who doesn't really have legendary upside in the top 3 rounds, just, I mean, like the path is like he scores a gajillion touchdowns. It's not enough. It's not convincing enough to me. Where I'm like, you can't like spread it all out and cover all your bases. Like you got to make some choices here. And Henry, Pacheco, over a large sample of seasons, I think betting against those guys is gonna net us better results in the 3rd round. He's, again, we probably should have taken more when he's at the 4-5. Rashee Rice, he's continued to rise. I think this is about as high as I'm comfortable going now. But where are you guys at? I raised him up like a day or 2 ago. It's just like, I haven't really taken much Rice. Like I was at one point at like 26% Rice, right around there. I'm down to 17%. Like I haven't gotten a lot of Rice over the last month as his price has really, really risen. That 17% is almost exclusively like late 5th or later. A lot of it's in the 7th, a lot of it's in the 6th. So I feel really good about how he played Rice, but this last like 3-4 week period, he's rocketed it up. We haven't, even though we're ahead right now, we haven't actually really been staying ahead the entire way because he's risen so fast. Thoughts on where he sits now?
Yeah, I was taking a ton of Rice. I'm looking at my drafts over the last week or so, and the last time that I clicked Rashee Rice looks like it was on like August 11th or something. So
yeah,
I haven't gotten a lot of him lately because he goes in the early 4th now.
Yeah.
My average let's see, my average ADP on Rashee is like right around pick 70. And I still have, let's see here, I still have 26% because he was one of my highest drafted players. But I'm taking him less now because he doesn't get to a spot where I, like him right around Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, DJ, like that all kind of makes sense to me. But like, I don't want to take him over those guys. And
I think I would take him right after Kelsey. I think I'd take him over Laporta, frankly. But that's about where I stop.
Yeah. One thing I have been, hearing people say is, oh, you can't draft Rashee Rice anymore. And this was even before he got to this point. You can't draft him anymore because so many people had him in the 8th round or the 7th round. And it's like, that makes so little sense because you won't see the vast majority of those teams, right? Like if Rashee, just like, let's think of this logically. Pretend that Christian McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey catches a Dewey, right? And he's all of a sudden, we think he's going to get suspended and he's going in the 6th round for a while. And then all of a sudden, news comes out. It was actually a Christian McCaffrey doppelganger. Wasn't even him. Everyone thought it was. Turns out
it was Luke McCaffrey?
Yeah, it was Luke McCaffrey. Turns out got the wrong guy. Christian's not being suspended. So a bunch of teams got him in the 6th. And he's on his way up. He's climbing back to the 101. And we're sitting here, and he's in the 3rd round. And people are telling you, you can't take Christian McCaffrey. There's teams that have him in the 6th. And so what? You're just saying that the other teams in your draft then get to have the 101 in the 3rd round because teams in a totally different draft room that you may never see, like, sure, you'll run into some of them in the playoffs probably, but you might never see these teams. You're like, I can't take the 101 overall in the 3rd round. Someone got a better price than me. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And like, you're just
539 teams is
right.
The final. Now you're gonna face, a group of 13 of, teams from different drafts in week 15. You're gonna face a group of 16 in round 3 in week 16. So you're gonna 12 other teams that might have Rice at a better price, 15 other teams that might have Rice at a better price. But fundamentally, it really matters when you get to week 17. A lot of those awesome Rice teams are going to be dead. They're going to have made the playoffs and still be dead because you have to finish 1st out of 13 and then 1st out of 16. It's super, super, super hard to do that. So how many of the teams have Rice at a cheaper price in the 539-person final and have what you need to get to the very top that overlaps with what you have that is also getting you to the very top? And it's like, I tend to agree. Like, there probably is like it's something maybe to like kind of break ties against. Like, I'd rather take, if I think Tank Dell and Rashee Rice are kind of similar bets, I'd rather take the guy who didn't used to be an 8th round pick. But as far as you can't draft this guy because he used to be an 8th round pick for not that long, and he was really more of he kind of settled in the 6th round for the longest period. I don't think that's. It's definitely like not ideal, but it's not something where at the 3-4 turn, it's enough to have me out on him.
Yeah, I think,
or even really fading him in any way.
The Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson year, where Akers 1-2 turn tears his Achilles, and Henderson goes from like the 11-12 turn to somewhere in the 3rd or 4th round. There's a little more cause for concern there, but again, you can always just take that type of player who is a better pick. Like, it might not be that much to quibble over, but they're a better pick when those other teams with value don't exist in the new tournaments. Like, would you rather Rice if you have like the bankroll in X amount of puppies or like 1/5 that amount of BBMs just for price point control? You'd rather him in the tournament where no teams have him in the 7th, but it's not something that like, oh, I can't take Rashee Rice in the 4th, especially if there's some correlation, a stack. So,
and really, when you just think, what it comes down to is, let's just say you're against someone that got Rashee Rice in the 8th and you had to take him in the 4th, right? And so then it's a 1v1 between the player that they had in the 4th versus the player that you have in the 8th, and it's, number one, the probability that either of those players end up even mattering in the final, right? Like, it's not a guarantee that either of those players are going to be ones that have to hit your lineup. So the 1v1 might not even matter. And even then, it's like, all right, what's the probability that the guy that he took in the 4th round versus the guy that I took in the 8th round, like, what's the probability the 4th round guy outscores the 8th round guy? it's not as high as you think. Like, yeah, he definitely, the guy with the 4th round player has the better end of it. But at the same time, like if you're sacrificing advance rate for passing up on Rashee Rice, like you gotta, you're just giving up so much for passing on a player that's really good. And now we've started to get to the price where it's like, all right, like we all said, we're not really hammering him at this point. But when he was still going in the 50s, it was still a really good pick. He was undervalued.
Yeah. I think in the outcomes where he's the nuts, you still want him because you have a chance to outscore those teams in a single week. It's not like total points where these guys, they're going to have the chance to outscore you over 17 weeks with that 4th round player versus your 8th round player. It's a single week. And so if he's the nuts in this format, you still really want him. If he is a bust, then like, who cares what you got him? That's going to hurt you a lot. I mean, it definitely hurts you more if you take him at the 3-4 turn, but it really comes down to like, don't draft busts. You know what I mean? It's like that it's not as important about where he was going before. If he busts, he busts. It's really like those middle outcomes, I think, where especially you're like, it doesn't really matter so much where his price was. You know what I mean? Because you're like, you might benefit from having Rice to get you to final or in the final, but it's like he's not. I don't know. I think it really probably matters the most when he's like the absolute stone cold nuts and he is like represented in 50% of the final. And then you're like, oh, damn it. It's going to be hard for me to actually win because there's so many Rice teams and so many of them got him at a cheaper price. But that's like still not terrible for you because you have the player who's the stone cold nuts. So you're still alive. So anyway, in this format, I'm just not that concerned about it. Tiebreaker. I think it's a tiebreaker. Mahomes. We wanted to talk about Mahomes. Where can we take Mahomes now? He's been a tricky one. We haven't rated at AP, but that's not. He's actually sort of tricky to play in drafts right now.
It does make it a lot harder to take him with Rashee's new price. Where I'm taking him the most often is just doing the 3-4 turn thing with Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
And I typically do it when the wide receiver tier of Zay Flowers is off the board. So Flowers goes before me. I'm out of the 12 spot. I started wide receiver because I'm about to take 2 detours. Then I'll do Mahomes Kelce. And then otherwise, like I've occasionally done him in, near the end of the 4th. And you're praying that Xavier Worthy comes back to you, or like if you miss, you do later Hollywood Brown. It's kind of nerve-wracking. It's a little scary. Unless you're on the turn, unless you're from the 1 spot and you get Mahomes and Worthy to fall to you, then that's okay. But it's still not, it's not even my favorite thing to do it that way. So it's hard to catch up on the Mahomes exposure that I want to get to.
Yeah, I'm behind on Mahomes this year. Like, I have some of the Mahomes Kelce 3-4 sometimes. Like, back in the golden days, added Rashee Worthy at the 5-6 turn, but I like just to even out my true portfolio of my exposure this year, just bet on Mahomes to lead the league in passing yards and touchdowns because it's really tough to secure the like Chiefs boom seasons in drafts right now when 4 players go in the pick 33 to 43, and then Worthy's probably going to join them soon. So unless you're just picking the 2 you like, so Mahomes +1 at the 3-4 turn, it's pretty tough to get actual exposure.
I would say on DraftKings it's easier, partly because Hollywood Brown has an ADP of 90.9 over on DraftKings. So if you're like a really annoyed, this is probably for Davis Maddock. Davis, if you're having trouble getting Chief stacks now on Underdog, head over to DraftKings because you still can get Hollywood cheaply. Not that I have to tell you, you're probably well aware. But Hollywood is much cheaper over there. I did this the other day in a 5-5-5. I did the Kelce Mahomes. And then you can actually push Hollywood to the 9th to hope he comes back in the 9th. He got sniped 1 pick from when I was going to take him, but you can like really push it if you want. But yeah, I think on Underdog it's just much more difficult right now. With Mahomes, I did the Worthy move. I pushed him around the 4-5 turn. I took Mahomes in the late 4th. And got Worthy, But then, like, you know, are you going to take Marquise Brown in the late 6th? I guess you probably should, but do I have to? All right, let's see. What else? We had a couple notes here. We should probably talk about some of these.
We're all seeing the same thing, right? Pat dropped off for a minute.
Yeah, I believe that Daniel dropped off as well.
Oh, one of us is going next. This is like a horror movie.
Yeah, uh-oh.
Yeah, I guess we'll keep it rolling with that.
Yeah, we'll keep it going.
It's a shame because he has next on the list. I'm not sure which falling receivers you wanted to talk about, but boy, do we have one. And I know you have some thoughts on this. Fat Keenan, baby. Big Keenan Allen. 230 the last time we checked, but as far as I know, it could be 240, 250. Zach, break down Fat Keenan. We don't care, right? Like, this is complete garbage. But it's we need more stories like this. This is where the rake gets paid, if I'm being honest.
Do you remember the DeAndre Swift homicide report when he was like,
yes.
Do I remember the DeAndre Swift homicide report complete with a call to the Philadelphia police station? I do. In fact, I do.
I was watching Hard Knocks, really scoping out Fat Keenan to see if the rumors were true. You know, heard whispers
looks great.
Heard whispers diabetes might take his foot. You know, the guy, he might be out there on a scooter on the field. No, I need all the Keenan Allen faders and doubters, you know, write your name down, make yourselves known, so that you can be dunked on
YouTube comments. Throw your name in the comments.
Yeah,
this should be on the census. Like, they do the census every 10 years.
Yeah, check the box.
What did you think of Fat Keenan?
Check the box. I subscribe to the Fat Keenan theories. I bought it hook, line, and sinker. I think the Keenan Allen dip is so sweet. You can get him at, you know, past pick 70 easily.
We're behind
DraftKings.
I actually think that I've already moved him up, so what you're seeing on the screen is not reflective of what he is right now. Anyway, but like, I agree. So the Fat Keenan Allen dip, it needs to be bought. I already moved him ahead of Ridley. I've got him back up at 58 in the rankings, but like,
it was crazy that you said the dip needs to be bought, because that's what Keenan was saying. He's like, oh man, I just want a little more dip so I can get back.
I was gonna make the same joke, just as Keenan would scoop the dip. But I've got Keenan at the 6-7 turn. I'm hoping we can keep the fun going on Fat Keenan, because if there are reports that like a 32-year-old's not looking great and weighs 230 pounds, I'll maybe like keep that in the back of my mind and be like, I'll break ties to the younger player who's like killing camp. But now it's like, Keenan's going 15 picks later because rumor unsubstantiated to the best of our knowledge.
But they're on Hard Knocks. Like, we actually can see. It's crazy to me that people are like, there's just no way to tell if he's fat. We just can't know. I wish someone was covering the Bears. I wish there were cameras at Bears camp. He's on Hard Knocks. He looks totally normal. Like, I really don't understand. Like, and the Bears are defending it. The Bears are like, it's good that he's big. Like, it's actually helpful to have gout to play wide receiver. People don't know that. I think we buy the tip here. Like, we're getting out of control as a community. Like, can we use our eyes and see that he's not fat? He doesn't look fat.
We need a Fat Keenan graphic, like him at the grocery store buying the dip, just with us.
But he'll also buy the dip.
I think another way to get his ADP lower is someone creates like a fake Keenan Allen burner account rating all the deep dish. He's just like, Pequod's pizza not good, not enough cheese.
Daniel, that person is you, my man.
Yeah, that's your calling.
A use case for AI here. We can
really leg up account if you're willing.
We Drico and I have an FFPC draft tonight, and the name of the team is Deep Dish Keenan.
Nice. I mean, okay. Keenan Allen, you taking him over Kyle Pitts?
It depends. I'm trying to get more Pitts lately.
What about Reed? I think I'm still taking Pitts. What about Reed? Because Reed's also falling. I
like both those players. I'm taking both of them over Calvin Ridley and sleeping like a baby. But when it comes to each other, that's where I'm really relying on the sidekick to help me balance it out between the two of them at an appropriate frequency.
Yeah, well, the sidekick's powered by these rankings, so we gotta figure out which guy we like more.
I mean, we can definitely move him over Ridley. We're very high on Kittle. I don't mind being 3.8 versus 4.8 ahead on Kittle, so we can move him ahead of Kittle. Rachaad White's a bad pick, so we can move him ahead of Rachaad White.
I've done that's what I moved him ahead of Reed was the last one.
That's fine too. Yeah.
Okay. And I have him right behind Pitts because I think one of the things I really like right now is if you're right on the turn, like if you're out of the 12, I'm just double stacking Keenan and Rome. That's pretty fun. And you're kind of like we've talked all summer about how like we really could use, some more wide receivers. Like that spot is tough to feel really strong at wide receiver. But if you can pull off the Caleb double with Keenan and Rome there, I think that's because Keenan, I mean, he was on the other side of the board all summer. So it's a pretty fun build if I really want it with Caleb, but you're really competing with the DJ Moore drafter for Caleb at that point.
I mean, you could also do it with the Kelsey Mahomes thing at the 3-4 turn. You start 2 receivers, Kelsey Mahomes, get 2 more. If Caleb falls really late, then you get a really sick value on Caleb. You can push him way past ADP there, see if he comes back 2 rounds later. And if you don't get him, you don't care because you have Patrick Mahomes covering rookie Caleb Williams. So
yep. Yeah, I like stuff like that. I have a big dog where I have Nico Diggs, but then I took Josh Allen. But I got Josh Allen, Keon Coleman, Samuel, and Shakir. So I have triple stacked Allen plus 2 Houston guys. I feel like I'm good. Like if I want Stroud and Allen to have good years, and good week. So yeah, I think covering, and you could do that with Allen too. Obviously, you could go Allen. I guess you won't have Kincaid because he's on the same turn as these guys. But I mean, if he were to fall, but you could still potentially get Keon Coleman if he were to fall all the way to the 7th. Otherwise, stack him up with the later receivers. So there's some other ways to play it, I guess, than just praying you get Caleb. But yeah, that one's a fun double. Rachaad White, I have been trying to take a little bit more of. Talked about him on Legendary Sickos as a guy where I'm like, are we sure he stinks as a runner? Because he actually doesn't stink as a receiver. So it creates like the path to betting against him is actually thinner than it might seem because he has to specifically be bad as a rusher. We know he's going to get used as a receiver, probably a lot. There's no competition for receiving snaps at all. And he's pretty solid as a receiver. So I've been, not that I want to be like super bullish, but I'm just more, especially in an environment where running backs are moving up in general. I think he's a better pick than we were giving him credit for. I'll put it that way. I
took him at pick 72 today. He was my second running back on a CMC team. And I had already taken, a detour with CMC, and I had Lamar Andrews. So I was really thin at receiver, but I managed to dig out later. But yeah, Rice or White at 72 felt too good to pass up. And I think the way you can kind of square he was like the literal worst rusher last season in the NFL is there's some amount of team level stuff that isn't appropriately getting filtered out by those advanced stats. And so really the question is how much of the team level stuff is still staying in there. It's like if someone took a shit in your cake batter and you're like, I swear I pulled the whole turd out, and you're not confident how much. You're like, I trust you.
What is this metaphor?
I get it.
Zach, we're tossing the whole batter. Do not try to pull shit out of batter and use it.
Yeah, but like we can get most of it out. I'm pretty damn sure.
So that's
using this batter. We're buying this batter.
So then that's the point on rush yards over expected. The poop was in your rush yards over expected cake, and then if that's your case against Rachaad White, like that's the cake you want to eat, dude. Are you confident that's the cake you want to eat? And if you are, then like you full fade Rachaad White.
You've just thrown out all. You're saying essentially all football stats are cake batter with shit then because they don't have noise.
No. I'm saying that there's some amount of the team level stuff there. And the primary bear case against Rachaad White is his advanced metrics are really bad, therefore can't draft him. But
our metaphor's supposed to be clarifying.
We've seen this though with the other Tampa Bay backs where they all have these bad, rush yards over expected, success rate metrics. And so there's some amount of it that's attributable to the team, but it's hard for us to know exactly how much.
Yes.
And so when you get to the extremes here, it's really about the extremes, because like Rachaad White is the worst. And so I feel like he gets painted in a little bit of a different light than the guys that are like bad, but not the worst. And so I feel like we just weigh rush yards over expected a little bit more when it comes to Rachaad White, right? Just because he won that title of he was the worst at this, right?
Yeah. And
so we just give it like a little bit more weight than we do with other players. And I think it's still a valuable stat, but at the same time, it's like, we like running backs that catch passes. So let's not be all the way out on Rachaad White. And if you've been drafting with us all summer, you're going to be underweight Rachaad White, which is where I want to be. This is just about like all the other running backs have moved up. He really hasn't moved up all that much here. And so it's just like grab a little bit of him, sprinkle him in. It doesn't feel like a bad idea to me.
Yeah, one note on rush yards or two notes on rush yards over expected. One, I do think you see, and I've looked at it before. I don't know if it's statistically significant. I'd have to go back to my math classes and see that. But you see a lot of running back teammate pairs make it to the top. The Browns were this way for like 3 years in a row. The Ravens have always been this way. We're seeing with the Dolphins. And that's not to say that like those teams couldn't have two good running backs. I mean, for a lot of them, they do. But like, Dearness Johnson was also the best running back in the NFL one year. Probably a really good system that the Browns had there. And that's why Nick Chubb can be the best running back in the NFL, and Dearness Johnson can outkick his coverage, outkick the coverage on him just being a hardly NFL caliber talent. And he looks kind of good there. And another one is that I saw this on Twitter a while ago. I wish I knew who said it, is that rush yards over expected is a model that predicts the rush yards you should get. And then players outperform under or over that number. And then we attribute 100% of the difference to the quote talent of the running back. There's an error in the model, and the error is listed under a player's name. And so we say, well, these two things are synonymous. This player created every ounce of the over or under expectation, but we're just assuming that the model has perfectly calibrated every other variable other than running back talent, which we know is not true. Like, it would be impossible to do
Seems
such
a little, it's kind of overstating this case a little bit, I think,
I mean, like when we talk about Rachaad White,
football stats are understood. Every single football stat, EPA per play, we attribute to the quarterback, but it's understood to be on some level a team stat as well.
I think people really struggle. Like I really think, I mean, people lose their minds when you just say the fact, Brock Purdy led the NFL in EPA. And like, you don't think he's good, do you? Like, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm still at like Roto World, so I get a lot of the interactions with more casual drafters. But you just post the EPA list, and they're like, you don't really think Tua is the fourth best quarterback in the NFL. I'm like, no. I posted the list. This is just the numbers. I'm like, you're stupid. I'm like, these
are the numbers, man.
I can only say that's what this one stat was. And I think we get a lot of that where people.
Some stats. One thing I find with like advanced stat, like I've seen this probably the most with Open Score and the ESPN receiver ratings in general, is that like I remember like I was showing on Ship Chasing, probably I was pulling up and kind of like talking about Jaylen Warren, obviously, and utilizing that metric to say, look how good that he's been. And Samaje Perine was in there, and it's like, okay, well, obviously this metric could really use some work if Samaje Perine's popping in it. But Perine has been popping in yards per route run as well. Like I believe he's like number one.
He was one last
yards.
year.
He was one. Yeah. Yep. So he led yards per route. So does yards per route run need work? It's a stat. Like a lot of these.
We need work. We as the people interpreting the stats
need work. We need the work. Yeah.
And I do think that gets overlooked sometimes. I do like amongst us. I do not expect any of you to claim that Brock Purdy is the best quarterback in the NFL. You all know that the context of his EPA is within his team, his system, etc. You post the numbers, and the people just can't accept the fact that the system made him statistically the best quarterback, or that the system made, in part, Rachaad White one of the worst running backs. And so I do think people like, it's almost like the Dunning-Kruger Valley, where you're like, these stats are good. And then once you hit that bottom of that valley, it's like, these stats, that's where you think, these stats are perfect. That's how you evaluate talent, sort by rush yards over expected. And then as soon as you step out that valley, you realize context is so important.
You could do worse than sorting by rush yards over expected.
It's a start. It's a start. I agree.
It doesn't perfectly. Yeah. But I think Rachaad White is a good example of where we don't want to go overly dependent on the rush yards over expected because, yeah, he was horrendous in that metric. And he was really bad in success rate as well, I believe. Let me pull up his success rate.
PFF stuff didn't like him either. Their yards after contact and their overall run grade didn't like him.
But yeah, so he's just bad in every stat. Because guess what? He had a bad run. Like, he was bad as a runner last season. I think we can be confident about that. But how much weight do we want to put on starting running back was bad in one season as a runner when he's a good receiver? Again, it's really about him being a good receiver. The one thing I was going to say, Daniel was going to jump in, but we lost him, it looks like. One thing I was going to say on Rachaad White is that wait, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you. I had to step away because my dog was very angry that I closed the door.
My next gen thing stopped working, so then I my internet went out, especially after losing Daniel. The one thing I was going to say on White is like there are some stuff. So I was looking at like his 20 or shout out to NFL Next Gen. They released, in addition to the rush yards over expected, the 15 plus 20 plus mile an hour marks that these guys hit. And White wasn't like that bad in that. He hit 15 plus miles an hour 19 times last year, which was like kind of in the Najee zone. It's five more than Zeke. Like he wasn't
all right.
Yeah, it wasn't completely washed. Still not great, but like he's I don't know. I think there's like a point at which you can overdo the predictiveness of this, of a single season where he was bad as a runner.
Yeah, as Kyle explained, as the leading critical RYOE theorist in the group, just Rachaad White, we want to believe that all these stats indicate he's bad. And for the record, he probably is bad, and the stats are more likely not indicative of his performance. But there's also a chance that I'm big on Dave Canales. I believe what he'll be able to do in Carolina. But if there's a chance the lack of a successful run game was more on Canales than it was on White or the players, they're now having Liam Cohn and new staff there, which could help. And also just on a portfolio level, we've been as close to zero on White as we've been on almost any player in the top 6 rounds. So this is much more a corrective measure. And the people that are listening to this, likely, I hope you've been drafting with us all along. You're probably low on White. We think, maybe we were a little overly pessimistic on White and want to just get you up to like maybe 2, maybe 4% across your portfolio.
Here's who I would compare him to. Second year David Montgomery, who went around this price. Really bad. Now, White, we have 2 seasons of him being really bad as a runner. So it actually isn't just the one. It's 2 seasons. But he's a really good receiving prospect, and he's been solid as a receiver, and that's where he really has that lockdown because he's also a good pass protector. He's got size. He's good. He was trusted with Tom Brady. He's going to be out there a lot. But he is, I mentioned the miles per hour. He was right there with David Montgomery. He had, 19, 15 plus mile per hour runs. David Montgomery was at 18. He's kind of plodding. He's a chunk play plottish type of runner, but he's better than Montgomery ever was as a receiver. And Montgomery has had some versatility when not playing with a much better receiving prospect like Gibbs. So I think that's kind of the type of hit you're hoping for. Like, hey, guess what? He wasn't as bad as we thought. Now, does this mean I'm gonna be hammering him? No, but like I'm still at 2%. I was at 1%. I'm at 2% now. I would like to finish with a little exposure blanket, 4%, something like that. 3 would be nice. I just think it was a mistake to be so definitive. Like he's a much better pick at this price than like Najee Harris was last year. I was totally comfortable fading Najee hard in the 3rd, 4th round last year. I'm very comfortable fading Derrick Henry in the 3rd round. Once we get to the 6th round, like you can build like kind of hero running back builds with White and stuff like that. But at a 6th round price, and you're really, really making the most out of just him getting a ton of touches every week. Yeah, that's why he's moved up. It sounds like you guys are on board now with him and barely in the top 60, but just ahead of ADP. All right, we covered any of these other, like Christian Kirk. I'm getting him in the 5th all the time now. Any thoughts on him?
Yeah, he slides a lot. We were getting him a lot early when the market was really low on him. Then we slowed down a little bit. The price kind of caught up to our rank, and then surpassed it a little bit. And then now he's coming back. I think a part of it is the fear that he is leaving the field in 2 wide receiver sets, but they did that last year, and then he got a lot of work. Like, I'm not terribly concerned with that. I'm pretty sure as of right now, he is their best receiver. There's room for Brian Thomas to become their best receiver this year. But at this price, it feels pretty reasonable to make a bet on Christian Kirk.
Yeah, I think he's fine at the price, especially since he's falling. I will say, like, I am worried that he doesn't play in 2 wide sets, because we saw last year, week 1, they did that. He ran like 66% of the routes, if I remember correctly. And then Zay Jones' knee or hamstring or whatever fell off, and they almost never for the rest of the season had a healthy receiving trio. So we didn't get the data to really say definitively, but there's that risk. And then there's, again, we roll the dice on this team could have a better wide receiver. Feels laden with risk. I still think if he is this team's top wide receiver, which is the most likely outcome, but this team also improves their passing, he's a pretty solid pick. But I'd say I lowered my thoughts on his floor meaningfully.
But in this environment, I mean, we have him ranked as wide receiver 33. He might be the best receiver on a good passing offense. That doesn't strike me as laden with risk.
I mean, well, no, you just described the upside. That's
right.
I agree, but risk is downside. Not, like,
I know, but I'm saying the price. Like, when we think about what's more baked in at wide receiver 33, like, he might be the best receiver on a good offense. Like, that's sounds like wide receiver 15 could be in play. Like, if he's the best receiver on a good passing offense, there's that's I don't know. I don't think I would take him actually wide receiver 15, obviously. Yeah. But like, he could be in that range. He could finish in the top 20 receivers.
If he runs hot on touchdowns, he absolutely, and that's, I think that's a big part of it. Like, he's probably good for 1,100 yards, like, and then you're just asking yourself, how many touchdowns did the guy get?
Yeah. Where it feels risky to me is if he is like with the, he's not going to be playing in 2 wide receiver sets. He was going more in this range, like in the kind of 44 range. And then that's where I do agree more that's, getting a bit riskier. But even then, like, I don't feel bad about teams where I took him in the middle of the 4th. That seems okay to me.
Yeah, it's fine. It's not terrible. And I mean, we haven't priced, like you said, we haven't priced where the risk is priced in the sense of he's come down a meaningful amount. I think he's fine where we have him, and we have him like 1 spot behind ADP, and it will probably fall another spot or 2. And at the end, we'll be like, yeah, he's a slightly good pick, actually, where right now, we're like, if this were his true ADP, maybe he's like marginally overpriced. So I think we have him priced correctly, but I would not have been, if we had left him where he was, I would be like, this is not a great pick.
It's hard for him to be a big miss, though. The way, when you think through it, like, a big miss seems pretty difficult for me. Like, what's the actual big miss without any kind of injury is Brian Thomas is just insane, and so Christian Kirk truly leaves the field in 2 wide receiver sets, and they don't run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, and like, but that seems pretty hard for that to.
And I think the big miss is he's not playing in 3 wide receiver sets, so his route participation is like 70-ish%, and he's not that efficient. The offense goes through Brian Thomas, but then Gabe Davis and Evan Ingram like siphon off enough so that his like targets per route run isn't that great. And all of a sudden, you're like, I think I just drafted Tyler Lockett in the 4th and 5th round.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's a good case for the big miss.
Yeah, at this price, that would be a big miss. So it's not. So I don't
think that's awfully likely.
There's risk, but
I'm pitching that as a potential thing that could happen. So I think it's realistic now that could happen. I think it's also priced perfectly in, if not slightly overpriced. It feels fine at this cost, but
yeah. While we're down here, Rico Dowdle. I've been moving him up. 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 I've been basically every hour on the hour. Have I gotten a little too saucy here? Where are you guys at?
Nope, you have not. I've been
because he's even higher than this in the pure ranks.
I've been taking a ton of Rico Dowdle lately. He's one of, I believe he's now my highest drafted player in Best Ball Mania. He's not my highest drafted in my whole portfolio. That would still be Drake May. But he's up there. The other place where I'm getting
fourth highest for me,
where I'm getting a truckload of Rico Dowdle is I've got 150 eliminator slows going right now. And in the eliminator in the early rounds where you've spent a lot of your draft capital, I really don't want to be correlating my pass catchers with their quarterbacks. I actually want the negative correlation of the running back with their quarterbacks, but still benefit from the season-long team level correlation. And I felt like Dak Prescott was underpriced the entire season. It's just really hard to stack him. And so I'm underweight Dak in the traditional tournament formats for best ball. But in the eliminator, where I'm really caring about, making sure I'm not going below a certain quantile each week to get eliminated, Dak Prescott at a value, I'm hammering. And then Rico Dowdle, anytime that I have Dak Prescott, I am taking Rico Dowdle if there's any chance that he would be gone by my next pick on the board. So I am going to be tremendously overweight the combination of Dak and Rico Dowdle in the eliminator. But yeah, he's a great pick. I mean, think about this. Tajay Spears goes ahead of Rico Dowdle. Can we, the Titans offensive line is almost certainly going to be worse than the Cowboys. That's how, Brandon Thorne at ETR has it ranked. And there's a pretty substantial gap there between the Titans and the Cowboys offensive line. We're pretty confident that Cowboys are going to score more points. Vegas has them projected, to score more points over the course of the season. Tajay Spears is probably the second back to Tony Pollard. I mean, sure, call him a true 50-50 split. So we're taking a guy in a 50-50 split on a worse offense with a worse offensive line with a running back who's could be a worse talent than him, maybe equal. But then we have Rico Dowdle, and he's on a better offense with a better offensive line, and his competition for running back is Zeke. It feels pretty. I mean, like a lot of these guys that go ahead of Tajay Spears, Zach Moss, like where you really get to the ones that give me a little pause are like Brian Robinson and Javonte Williams, just because I think they probably could own more of their backfield share than Dowdle will likely own. In the upside scenarios, Dowdle owns just as much as those guys, but I don't think that's the most likely thing to happen. You're muted, Pat.
Sorry, I'm with you. That's where I think I also start to feel like, yeah, I'd rather just have the guys with the more locked in roles. Let me see if this clip will work. I think this is what I think it is. Here, let me share this. This is from Coach Speak Index. You guys hear this?
Yeah, it's a deep room. I mean, you can't look at the depth chart and see how many guys we got there, with I think Rico Dowdle's having a hell of a camp, Zeke's another one of those guys that we were talking about, right, where you're going to be smart, a little bit like Brandon. He doesn't really need smart. Every rep. He knows how to read inside zone from the front side, covered lineman to the backside three technique. He knows all that stuff. Again, then Malik Davis is having a hell of a camp.
Well, that's enough. We don't need to hear about that. Got the clip. Yeah, no, I mean, Rico Dowdle having a hell of a camp. That's what we want. That's what we want the guy to start with. He goes on to talk about.
It was like fawning too. Back. It wasn't just Rico Dowdle's having a hell of a camp. It was, Rico Dowdle's having a hell of a camp. It was like,
I don't know if it's quite like that.
Oh, it was like that.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, honestly, we have him higher. So the way, the ADP right now is kicking in. So like, I'm not putting Rico Dowdle. Although, should we? Like, I will say over the last week, I haven't been getting as much Rico Dowdle as I want, and I want to get a lot of Rico Dowdle. Like, would you?
He goes at the 9-10 turn now often. So
yeah, would you?
I'm personally fine.
Override the ADP.
Yeah, because I take him ahead of Spears. I'll take Moss over him because I was underweight Moss, and Moss is falling now. And so, but in, like, for example, in eliminators, I'm often doing like the Dak, Dowdle, or Burrow and one of Chase Brown or Moss is something I'm doing often. And I think those are pretty close. Like, I think you gotta, like, if I laid you even money, do you feel strongly on the side of Burrow versus Dak and Burrow with one of his backs versus Dak with Dowdle? Like, do you think that feels kind of like a pick'em to me?
It feels like a pick'em, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna move him up a little bit more. I'm gonna get him up to like 108, right behind Spears.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. One of the things, while we're in this range, guys, I don't know. You guys watching Hard Knocks? You watching?
Oh yeah.
I haven't watched. No.
Okay, well, Hard Knocks, little subplot. I'm mad at myself for Daniel had to drop, and I wanted to get his reaction to this too. But little subplot: Velus Jones. He's got a ferret. He's just a fun-loving guy. Him and Michael Pittman bought a ferret together. Told a hilarious story about that. And I believe he named the ferret after Crash Bandicoot.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
cool. All right, I'm in.
Yeah, he is getting work with the running backs now. Velus Jones, obviously, one of the strangest picks in like the modern era. He went in, like, I believe, the 3rd round at the time. I think it was the same year that D. Eskridge went in the 2nd round, and it was both of those were extremely confusing picks. To like, have you guys like considered looking at statistical production once?
Well, of course, Velus Jones famously was on the graphic that was just like a .jpeg of a cylinder with a Bears logo on it that said analytics or whatever, because it was because they were calculating like a pseudo RAS score, and they were just, I think, just about to trade for Chase Claypool, and it was like, oh, I guess we just Google RAS and get these guys, even though Velus was just almost not a draftable prospect. He was like a 6-year player without a breakout.
Yeah, he was quite old when he came into the league, but he was a really good special teamer, and is good with the ball in his hands. And now with the new kickoff rule, I think they're kind of looking for an excuse to keep him around, and that excuse right now is seeing if he can compete for a running back job. Does that make you feel great about DeAndre Swift? Because it doesn't make me feel great. It doesn't make me feel great that like they're like, ooh, maybe we could use more of is gadgety running back plays, because I thought that's what we were getting with Swift. And I haven't lowered Swift on this snooze at all, but like Swift has become what I have lowered Swift on is the preseason rep stuff, which didn't seem all that great for him. It's just like constant kind of committee drumbeat really since they signed him. I think I'm just done with like, can I have one piece of bullish news on DeAndre Swift, please?
Yeah, Khalil Herbert got an awful lot of work with the ones to be going, pick 170 and have his backfield mate DeAndre Swift, who I believe has been a worse rusher than Khalil Herbert every year either of them have been in the league.
Yeah, Khalil Herbert he's a success rate star. He hits the right hole. He does what he's supposed to do. Swift does not. He's kind of the big play boom bust type of guy, but the boom hasn't been the boom is very reputation dependent because it hasn't been showing up in the stats very much. And
I don't even think you need to get into all them fancy metrics to say that Khalil Herbert's better than DeAndre Swift. You can just look at good old fashioned yards per carry, and if that's more your fancy. But yeah, that was the
how much poop does yards per carry have in it?
It's probably quite a bit. You should.
It's mostly poop.
It's not consumable.
It's mostly poop.
Yeah, you'll get sick. But yeah, I mean, the guy with the ferret wasn't so concerning to me for DeAndre Swift.
The guy with the ferret.
that was too derogatory. Velus Jones seems like a really nice man.
He does. I'm rooting for him.
And yeah, RIP to Crash. I believe that in this most recent episode of Hard Knocks, they did disclose that Crash is no longer with us. Much like DeAndre Swift's fantasy relevance. So I'm not super into DeAndre Swift. However, there are some rooms where you can get in there with some like-minded individuals that are also no longer into DeAndre Swift, and he will plummet. Like, he damn near free-falled in a couple rooms I was in today. I think he went in the hundreds in a BBM that like in the mid hundreds. So that was like a decent enough fall to where I really thought about him. It was a little bit disgusting. I had to choose. I think I was pick 104, and I had to pick between Jaylen Warren and DeAndre Swift. And I took Jaylen Warren. But nodding in approval. But yeah, it felt like, man, this is probably like one of the better prices I can get on Swift in the whole tournament. But you know what it came back to for me is I've done that a lot with players in the past where they're fallers, and I'm like, this is going to be one of the best prices in the whole tournament. And you know when that doesn't matter? When the player doesn't score you any fantasy points, it doesn't actually matter how sick a price. Infamously, Sky Moore, you could get insane prices on Sky Moore, and it didn't really do anything for you. Not saying that DeAndre Swift is going to be the pure zero that Sky Moore was, but just that, like, he should be going after Rico Dowdle, probably.
I kind of think so too. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's jumping the shark, but let's be more reasonable.
After Javonte Williams, like,
what about Devin Singletary?
Devin Singletary is like has the workload. The concern with Singletary is pretty similar to the concern with Swift, where you have a running back behind that player who could just be the better running back. Now for Swift, it's different because I don't think Tyrone Tracy's ever earning more than like. It'd be really surprising for Tyrone Tracy to get more than 50% of the snaps, right?
Yeah.
And I also think it'd be pretty surprising for Khalil Herbert to get maybe like 60%, but more than that's tough because he's really not a passing down.
What you're worried about is Herbert gets like 35% of the carries, but then Roshan's coming in for a bunch of snaps.
Right.
And you're just like getting hit by like all these different backs, you know, and that's why like I do think that like, hey man, like please don't throw that screen to Velus Jones when it could have gone to DeAndre Swift. Like that actually we're get to a point where like that kind of stuff would hurt if Khalil Herbert's going to get a lot of work with the ones. Like if it's a three-way committee, I do not want the kick returner getting like that's the Cordarrelle. Like we might have a Cordarrelle situation here.
I was going to say there was a play where Cordarrelle Patterson last year got a goal line carry, and I believe he scored on it. And I threw my phone through the drywall. I was like, this is awful. This is it's ruined my day already. And it's 145. And that's what
seems silly now, but you have holes in your wall because of this exact concern.
Can we I want to think critically about this one because I think it's a pretty important spot. Let's talk about the situation where Swift buries you. What does that look like and how likely is that?
So Swift buries you because he never like gets used like a workhorse, but he has, 55% of the snaps, and he gets used as a receiver. Like I think maybe
like Aaron Jones back in the day, when Aaron Jones was really lighting up the Packers, where he was busting the long runs, but he was versatile. So they gave him some work at the goal line. They threw him at the goal line. Like his usage was creative, like beyond what we see for players who are typically of his ilk. Like he's not a big battering ram, but they were able to use him at the goal line. Like maybe Austin Eckler is sort of that guy too, where he's not a big dude, but he's versatile. And that's useful to switch things up on your opponents when they don't know if you're going to just hammer it between the tackles or if you're going to have the running back flare out and like catch a pass. I guess that's it. Like he is a versatile, explosive playmaker who just is explosive enough that you kind of are, as a coach, you're willing to sacrifice he bounced that one out because he's really explosive. Oh, but man, I struggle to see that.
And he hits, regularly enough. He gets like some really nice spike weeks for us. So he actually is very much a better and best ball type of guy where like, and he fits perfectly in rooms where, and let's say here's, one way he buries us is that basically he does what we're hoping like Jonathan Brooks will do, where we think Jonathan Brooks is going to be the lead of a committee, but he's going to be explosive. He is the lead of a committee and explosive, but we get the whole season. He didn't start the season coming off a torn ACL. So at this price, he's able to easily pay off the ADP. It's like, hey, Zamir White turned out to be a committee back, but he doesn't catch passes, and DeAndre Swift is more explosive. So that's where I think we run into trouble, where the Bears' offense is awesome. We want pieces of it. He's got enough of a piece and is explosive enough to where there's some really big weeks that really help teams, and we don't have them.
And so I think the biggest thing for me hearing you guys go through all those player comps and situations where this buries us is okay, Aaron Jones has been really good and really efficient for his whole career. And Austin Eckler was really good and really efficient when he was really good. And with Jonathan Brooks, he was pretty elite in college. Like he was very good and very efficient in college, and he's a rookie. So we truly have no idea how good he actually is going to be in the NFL game. So the range of outcomes is quite wide, but that also means that the upside is quite high. Like if he is as good as he possibly could be, it's a huge win for you. And we haven't seen that with DeAndre Swift really in the NFL, that he's really good. And this is, I was so in on DeAndre Swift when he came. Like, it's been a long time that I've been waiting for this ship to come in for my DeAndre Swift belief to pay off. And we're kind of like, fool me one time, shame on you, fool me two time. I'm at like fool me three time, can't get fooled again at this point.
Fool me with bad rushing efficiency playing next to Jalen Hurts. I think I'm out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like let me pull up my Swift exposure. I think
like him. I moved him ahead of Zamir White. I think talking through how he buries us, I'm like,
yep,
yeah. What about Raheem Mostert, who you had flagged as someone you wanted to move up?
I think Mostert over both White and Swift makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but do you want him up from here?
Oh, do we want Mostert up further?
Yeah. Didn't you flag Mostert?
That was Daniel, but I agree with him. Okay. Yeah, like I'm taking Mostert over Warren at this point just because I have so much Warren and I want to get more of both together. I want both. Don't you want? How many of your Warren teams do you have Mostert on?
Not a ton because I don't have that much Mostert, which I agree with you is not ideal. I'm at 7% Mostert, so I don't know. I need to look up the combinatorial, but it would be more than I would have thought at first glance. Let's talk Warren because that's really what now we've run up against. Because I actually don't mind the over Brooks take. Really, sort of about the type of room you're building. I think, right? If you need the early season production, like I took, I had CMC and HN. Let's call it CMC and Kyron though. I'm taking Jonathan Brooks over Raheem Mostert there, like 100%.
Yeah. I agree with you. By the way, if you want to pack your Brooks bags, go get some DraftKings drafts in. His ADP is right around pick 115. I got him today in the 120s because I was good on running back and I was really hurting on wide receiver, so I had to pass on him to take Jordan Addison at pick 120. But yeah, he falls. He falls a lot.
No, I need to get more of a one DraftKings. I just need to draft more over there in the first place. Warren, let's talk him because he's fallen. We're still slightly ahead of ADP. He looks iffy for week 1. There was a report today that it was not a long-term issue. You guys had a blurb on it at RotoWorld. Tomlin said Jaylen Warren's hamstring is, quote, not a long-term concern. He would sit this week, meaning the preseason game, but otherwise downplayed the injury. Is reportedly out multiple weeks and has a chance to suit up for the Steelers preseason season opener against the Falcons. But obviously he could miss that game. Maybe he misses 2 games. That should come with a discount. I think it already has. Like we were taking, he was actually starting to move up kind of into the mid-7th. Like, I notice anytime I don't get him. So I was getting frustrated that, he would go and you'd left with like Ramondre, Aaron Jones. So he's kind of fallen from this group down to this group already. How are you guys playing Jaylen Warren?
I'm trying to not be a price enforcer on him because I have like 30% on Underdog and I think close to 40% on DraftKings. And so I'm trying to get him at good prices now. So I will end up having less of him than I was previously taking during these drafts that I'm doing right now. I'll still end up overweight on him. Like instead of getting 30% of him, I might get 15% of him, or 12%
in this group of drafts.
in this subset of drafts, but I'm going to be getting him at a better price. And I like that overall for my portfolio because I'm trying to make sure I'm building teams that aren't the same Jaylen Warren teams that I've already got. And so getting to get like some of the best stuff that I've been able to do is get teams where I've gotten both Jaylen Warren and Jonathan Brooks like a round and 2 rounds past where they were going, and then taken a different player that goes right next to that. Like Aaron Jones, Jaylen Warren, Jonathan Brooks, all 3 of those guys used to go back to back to back, right at that 7-8 turn. Getting all 3 of them on a team is beautiful. That's awesome to me. So I'm really trying to remind myself that when I'm on the clock and, pick 85 and Jaylen Warren's there, I'm like, this is such a smash. Like, just chill. Sometimes he comes back to you, sometimes he won't. But like, just chill. Take a different player. Take your Raheem Mostert. Let him come back to you. That's me speaking from a place of having 30+% Jaylen Warren, one of my highest exposed players. So if you're lower than that and you're like, I want to be hammering right now, even the little discounts, like I'm in for it, like go ahead. I still think he's a great pick. The risk to me is not like he misses week 1 or even misses the first 2 weeks. Like those weeks are some of the least important weeks in the season. The rest of your players should be healthy, provided you don't have like players with back-weighted stuff like Jonathan Brooks, or Nick Chubb. The rest of your team's healthy. No one's on bye yet. You're fine if he misses a week or 2. The concern is that it's a soft tissue injury and it gets re-aggravated. That's the concern. But I mean, I already thought that the price was pretty good on him. And so maybe now, like with the injury, the price is probably fair. So that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I'm with Zach there in that we have a lot of him. Like, of course, it's fun to have 30% of him, but when we can get him at a really strong price and still end up from today until September 5th or whatever the final day is, still get really strong prices and get 15, 16, 17%, I think that's just a smart way to build a portfolio. Whereas I'm actually price enforcing a little bit more with Zach Moss because I had none of Zach Moss. I just didn't draft this guy. And that was probably like slightly a leak. I know it's like in hindsight, it looks good, but I didn't need to get 0 Zach Moss. He wasn't the worst bet on the board a month ago, but I did end up with almost none. I have some, but almost none. Now I'm like, well, I'd love to at maybe I can't get the best price. I'm going to be the one enforcing. Someone could end up getting a better price, but I have none of him and he's fine at this cost. Don't want to say hammer that, but I'm going to be over 8% Zach Moss from here on out because I have none of him. And I think trying to get a strong portfolio that is maybe less of your personal stands, but getting it in really good with the prices and still taking your stands is how I want to play this.
Yeah, with the Warren stuff, I'm trying to think through, like, is he now a good price at this? Is he now a good bet at this price? Which I think he is. He's not as good of a bet as he was. I thought he was an absolute smash before. Now I think he's like kind of fairly priced. There are players I'm trying to mix in a little bit more. I am trying to get more Mostert, especially like Warren now moves to like a little slightly different archetype of player where we're not going to be counting on him to even play week 1 potentially. So he's not going to be, if you really need the running back touches, right? Mostert fits that a lot better. The thing I've been struggling with is like, okay, I'm going to get paid by the market not to take Warren at this price. I'm getting paid to wait basically because there's some potential that he falls like all the way into the hundreds. And so what am I getting for that? What am I being paid? Is it a little extra Raheem Mostert? It doesn't do a lot for me. I mean, it does a little. Like I'll dabble with that. The one thing that I have found compelling and does keep me pushing Warren right now in some drafts is completing stacks. So, or getting quarterback upside. So I think like getting a little bit more Jaden Daniels, who I'm trying to get more of. Getting the Dak stack taken care of, getting a Burrow stack taken care of, getting Love stacked up. That's how I think actually the most important thing is that he's behind this group of quarterbacks in the ranks now. That is where I'm saying, like, before I probably would have taken Warren, like, a month ago, if Warren was here, I don't care about this stack, man. I'm taking Warren. He just fell to pick 90. But now I'm going to go ahead and just get the stack taken care of. And if Warren falls to me, amazing. But maybe Brooks falls to me if that doesn't happen. And if not, I do like the group of running backs going just behind as well. maybe I get Swift as a discount and price and force that a little bit. So there's, and honestly, there's lots of guys in this group who I like. So that's how I'm playing it. I'm letting the stacks, the basically quarterbacks is where I am feeling like, okay, the market is giving me something that I wasn't necessarily always getting before. Like I wasn't prioritizing getting the Jordan Love stack with Jaden Reed or whatever, because I was taking a lot of Jaylen Warren or other running backs in this range. I am going to get that a little bit more and give my teams a little bit of a different texture. And then if I still get Warren on that team, like, oh, that's pretty nice.
I've been using it as my way to get Brock Bowers now, because
that's a good one too.
I was a little under on Brock Bowers for a while, and I decided that was not the way that I wanted to go out. I didn't want to be sitting here in week 15 and Brock Bowers has gotten 2 rushing touchdowns, a receiving touchdown, and he's throwing for another touchdown to Devontae Adams, and I'm sitting here with 6% Brock Bowers, really sad. I wanted to get myself to be overweight Brock Bowers, which is hard to do when you have 1,500 teams drafted already. It's hard to turn a cruise ship. But yeah, the Jaylen Warren injury that's allowed me to get Brock Bowers up to where I want to be on it.
Let's close out real quick with tight ends. I know we all got to head out soon. Kyle, do you have enough time to just talk through late round tight ends?
Yeah,
okay,
go for it.
All right, I just want to go to the end here because I think it's actually the late round tight ends are now changing up a little bit how I'm drafting, how I'm approaching the late rounds. Like I mentioned this BBM that I had earlier today. I went running back. I went like 5 receivers. I grabbed quarterbacks and like Jonathan Brooks and some running backs in kind of those middle rounds. And I completely punted tight end, like completely punted it. But I ended up with, I believe I had Jonnu Smith, Cade Otton, and Jawan Johnson as my 3 tight ends, taking them not with my very last picks, but round 15, 16, and 17. I got those 3 guys. That feels pretty good to me. It feels pretty good. I think Jawan Johnson coming off the pup, I mean, we're way ahead of ADP. We were way ahead before he was hurt. Now, he's been an awesome pick for a while. His pup news is kind of like old news in a sense. Everything's been really trending in the right direction for him for a long time. Jonnu Smith, we really like. Cade Otton, we're not that into, but when he falls to the 17th or the 16, 12, I got him at. So, I'm going to take that. But then I think Theo Johnson, pretty interesting pick. You get some leverage there. He wasn't drafted in the early part of the tournament, looking like the top pass catching tight end on the Giants. Colby Parkinson looking like the starter for the Rams. I finally feel kind of confident about taking him. Not like a smash, but I think you can definitely take him. Mike Gesicki, honestly, I'm willing to take with Burrow. I am willing to take Zach Ertz, but I have Daniels. I am. I kind of need to be punting the position, but I feel pretty good about our punt options right now. Where are you guys at on the kind of how you're attacking the last rounds, and if you're using these tight ends to help you do that?
Yeah, I think this is one thing we've talked about is we don't feel as good about the last round picks as we did last year in terms of, oh, this guy looks like a league winner. Kyron last year was like, he just looks like the starter. Like they are treating him like he is a meaningful part of the offense, and the guy who plays ahead of him is dreadful. It's a windmill pick, and it hit obviously in a massive way, but in a way that aligns with what we predicted. Puka.
It's honestly as if like CEH, if there was no Pacheco and CEH and Carson Steele were getting rested for the 3rd preseason game, I think we'd be drafting Carson Steele a lot.
Yeah.
If there was no Pacheco.
Yeah. Or so we had that one. Puka. Okay, I didn't love his profile, but man, there are a lot of routes and a pretty solid passing attack, and his profile had a high upside.
And he was getting rested now too.
Yeah, exactly. And we got confirmation that he was clearly a starting wide receiver.
Right.
And
we had him really high in the ranks as a result, right?
We had him up in the ranks. We didn't get completely out on him. It was that we also had Tutu up there too. And so it was like, take whichever one you want. There's no difference.
But he was ranked ahead of Van Jefferson, right?
Oh God, don't tell me. No. I wasn't ready to confront that.
The Puka one still stings. Yeah. We can't let that happen again.
Yeah, so we had picks last year that we felt really good about, and I think some of those guys have just gotten priced up. Braylon Allen could have been that guy, but for whatever reason, the market didn't react to Kyron last year, and it did, understandably, correctly react to someone like Braylon Allen. So we don't find a windmill pick in round 18. And this was a big debate in the Discord, was like, what would you do? How often would you draft a guy who gets you 8 points every single week? And we think like, yeah, that's probably like a good advance rate pick. And maybe he ends up cracking your lineup or whatever. We don't have a windmill pick in the 18th, but we have a lot of the more theoretical get you 8 points every week. And it comes at tight end because we have guys. Colby Parkinson is just.
We were talking about a flex player in that hypothetical, which I tend to be a little bit less interested in because I'm thinking like I'm almost taking a 0 in week 17 in the set. The odds of that guy hitting my lineup in the winning lineup are pretty low. But if at tight end,
yeah,
that's enough. Like you're live. If you get 8 points out of your tight end in week 17, like you're live. You're not psyched, but like that could be more than enough.
We were saying, Zach and I were saying that the 8 point flex player was like, he's probably a good pick. It's not fun. Now you don't have to play him in flex. He's your tight end where no one scores any points. That is just legitimately a pick in the absence of an 18th round pick that we actually think is a just complete smash. Just take the tight ends who Colby Parkinson has completely locked it up. Theo Johnson looks like a committee plus tight end in week 1, and he's the rookie. We expect his role to grow at least somewhat. Jawan Johnson is just a good field stretching starting tight end. Now is super cheap. We've got the guys who we can lock up roles for and at a position where like, oh, you're out there a bunch and you score 2 touchdowns in week 17. It's over. That's the guy. So I think that's becoming this is the great 18th round pick. This year, it just comes in a different form, and it's tight ends who are mispriced.
Yeah, I've been taking a ton of Theo Johnson. I've got like over 300 slow drafts going right now, but I'm already up to 7% Theo Johnson. And that was, we were not taking Theo Johnson.
0% for you 2 months ago or whatever.
So to get that many Theo Johnson teams means I'm clicking him a lot. And he just seems like such a clear, like this player's upside is not being appropriately priced. Like this player is being priced at his like, median outcome, probably even a little lower than his median outcome right here. Like the Giants are probably bad. They probably won't score that many touchdowns. But like, what if Theo Johnson happens to be the second best pass catcher there behind Malik Neighbors? What if this guy is going to do the Jake Ferguson thing, but for Danny Dimes? Like, yeah, it's definitely worse than it won't give you the full Jake Ferguson experience then from last year. But like, also, what if he's better than Jake Ferguson? There's just a lot of room to run on Theo. And if we were willing to do this with Ben Sinnott, who we were really clicking, even through like some of the dark times, we were still clicking Ben Sinnott. I don't know about
him sometimes. I still click him sometimes. He's way more of a, I probably need Jaden Daniels at this point, but
yeah, I'm pretty comfortable on I think I'm standing pat on I got 7% Sinnott. That feels, I'm happy to watch that number dwindle a little bit heading into the season. There's a lot of hurdles for him. He's like the third tight end on the depth chart there, it sounds like. But yeah, I mean, in short, like there's a lot of late tight ends. I really think that you set yourself up well if you get one of the elite tight ends, and then you can either stop at 2, you can just push tight end, and then just take 1 or 2 in your last couple rounds. And I basically if tight end is dead, if like this list of guys who we're interested in is all off the board and we start getting into like the Michael Mayers or the, guys who are like still good clicks on FFPC, but like not as exciting on Underdog. If I'm into that range of guys, then I'm like, I'll just stop at 2. It's fine. But if I'm sitting there and I've got like Mark Andrews plus Jonnu Smith, and then Theo Johnson is there as my last pick in the 18th round, I'm like, sure, yeah, welcome aboard, Theo. So I'm mixing that in a good bit, and I just think it helps you out a lot in navigating the wide receiver position, and specifically the running back position. There was like a brief window when running back felt really good in the last round or 2 rounds, and like all of a sudden, all the guys that we liked have moved up more, and I feel worse about having to click a running back in round 17 or 18. All of a sudden feels back to bad again. So my last 2 picks typically now are going to be one of quarterback, tight end, or wide receiver. And it's never a wide receiver I'm expecting anything out of. It's purely dart throw.
Quarterback, you say?
Yeah, I do. I've actually, so I took a
Well, Pat,
naked.
he's not your last pick. You usually take him with your 11th, 10th sometimes. So
you guys might have to talk me out of taking him in the 11th if he has a good preseason game. I'll tell you that.
I had a stretch where I was like, I looked at my DraftKings exposure, and I have so much Drake May in my 5-5-5 teams. I have 42% Drake May overall on DraftKings, and it's like I need to just settle down. I don't want my entire season to, like, injuries do happen, so it's like I'm getting to the point where it's like it's starting to be,
even if you love him, there's an element of risk mitigation where, like, your season can go up in flames if the process was the stone cold nuts. Maybe you don't want one thing to determine the entire outcome of your season. We still can be very overweight. 40% is insane.
I stopped setting up the Drake May stacks. When I was staring down, Jalen Polk versus AD Mitchell, I was like, normally I'd take Jalen Polk here to set up Drake May. We're going to take AD Mitchell. So I'm doing a favor to future Sack, so he's not tempted by the seduction of Drake May. But I had a bunch of those drafts get to the 18th round today. I'm doing all my slow drafts I'm going through, and I keep seeing teams with no Patriots on them. Like, this feels intentional. Someone got in here and did something on my slow drafts. And Drake May is there in the 18th round. I'm like, fuck you guys. We're taking naked Drake May in the 18th round. Because it's the highest upside pick by a large margin. Like, you're telling me I have to choose between Drake May or I'm picking like Andre Yoshivas, or I'm picking like, Justice Hill. Like, no, I'm taking Drake May. So
I've legitimately on DraftKings done. Oh, but it's so good.
Just checking Twitter.
This just came up for you.
This came up. This is just on the algo. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been in the 19th or 20th round on DraftKings. No Patriots, and I'm like, Drake May rush 500 yards. Done. Deal. Don't care. Like, as Sack said, it's literally Justice Hill. Like, it is backup players. It's Ray freaking McLeod or Drake May. Especially on DK, it's so easy. The 19th round, everyone just passes on him for no reason because DK drafts are weird. May. I don't care.
One last one that I wanted to hit on that we didn't touch on was Jalen Tolbert used to be a click that people were making in the really late rounds. He's screaming up. In the preseason game, Jalen Tolbert played, but a lot of the starters, including Kevontae Turpin, rested. And there's also some Cowboys insiders who are saying that they expect Kevontae Turpin to be really involved around the goal line and in red zone packages specifically this year. And the verbiage that they're using when they talk about Jalen Tolbert is not, to me, it doesn't sound like the optimistic, like, this he's been so good in camp. The language that keeps being used is he has to get better. He has to do more. And it's like, so the Cowboys are just praying that Jalen Tolbert bails them out and he wasn't a totally wasted. I believe he was a 3rd round pick. They're praying that he was not a wasted 3rd round pick. It's not because of anything he's doing in particular. Now, to be fair, he worked out, with Dak privately this offseason. They had, building good chemistry. There have been good things said about, like, the deep balls that Dak's been hitting with Jalen Tolbert. So I think what you're getting with Jalen Tolbert is you're probably getting like Michael Gallup from last year, which wasn't great.
Or 2 years ago, maybe, because he was splitting time with Tolbert at the end. It was completely useless.
Yeah. I mean, you're not getting Michael Gallup from 3 years ago when he was 1,000.
You're not getting pre-ACL tear Michael Gallup.
Right. And the other thing that you might also be missing is one of the Cowboys' favorite plays, and it did not work anywhere near enough for it to be so preferred for them to run, was Michael Gallup corner fade in the end zone. I mean, if you watch lots of Cowboys games, there were times where they would run that shit back to back. Like, Michael Gallup doesn't get open, loses the route. Do it again. It was just a mistake the first time. And so I think you might miss out on that opportunity with Jalen. Like, you're not even getting that out of Jalen Tolbert because they're telling us, like, yeah, we think Kevontae Turpin should be installed in a bunch of these red zone packages. So I would just say, like, pump the brakes on this Jalen Tolbert stuff. Like, he was a great pick when he was a last round pick.
Well, we're so far behind that pumping the brakes is not gonna We're just out. Like I think it's, like I don't think he's like, how could you have taken him before kind of vibes. Like he was a good pick where he used to go, and I get why he's moved up to some extent, but I don't. It kind of reminds me almost of like Tutu Atwell or something last year. Like as far as what you're kind of hoping the type of hit will ultimately look like realistically.
Tutu Atwell will be an insane outcome for him.
That would be pretty. Yeah, it'd be good. But I think even then, like Tutu kind of declined over the course of the year, not because of Puka, because of DeMarcus Robinson. Like someone else came in and started doing the job a little bit better. I think that could happen to him. I think Brooks, I think Flournoy could start to eat in over the course of the season. Who've also, they've said nice things about those guys. And then Turpin could kind of, be kind of gadgety around the goal line, as you're saying. The problem for me with Tolbert is that we've never had evidence of him being good. Last year, he managed to split the role with Gallup down the stretch, which was something. But Michael Gallup retired at the end of this year. I mean, like past Michael Gallup before he retires, like that seems like a decent enough bar to have for a player. I guess it does feel like a little bit just kind of like wish casting. Like we need a guy in this situation to step up. Wouldn't it be nice? And it would be nice, but I just what evidence do we have that he will do it?
Yeah, there are a lot of guys we could go through and say, like, what's the difference between him and Mac Hollins? Mac Hollins, like, I think he's running a ton of routes for the Buffalo Bills. I don't think he's very good. You know who I don't think is very good? Jalen Tolbert. Like, there's just not, like you said, not a lot of evidence that he's anything special.
Mac Hollins is very draftable, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I picked him out, because he's actually
we have him behind Tolbert, but he's quite draftable.
We have him behind Tolbert. We have him ahead of ADP. We do not have Tolbert ahead of ADP. Jalen Nailor. Jalen Nailor is, if you want to go to the younger end of players, Jalen Nailor, by all of the beat reports, has completely locked himself into the wide receiver 3 role. It doesn't seem like there's really much left to say on that. He's young. He just hasn't honestly been on the field a ton to this point. Actually does have like a really good yards per out run, like 2.48 if I remember correctly. It's on a sample that I hardly care about. But to the point, I'm guessing if he hasn't done much in 2 years, he's not that good. He's going to get a lot of routes. He's priced at 212. That's where these guys should go. He's probably not that good. Maybe Nailor's good, but the median outcome for a guy of his ilk is that he's not that good. But you're going to get a lot of routes. He makes sense as a stacking option. Price him at ADP of 2-1.
84
something.
Routes, by the way. I had to see this. 2.48 yards per out run on 84 routes.
Yeah, he's a late round pick. He hasn't played much. He's
third year guy.
Yeah, he's probably not that good, right? Guys who just are so.
But he's a start. He looks like a bit locked in starting slot receiver.
Yeah,
and we don't know if he's good or not. So that seems fine. Yeah.
And price that guy somewhere that starts with 2 and probably follows with another digit that isn't even 0. And I'm in. It's fine. Sure, I'll take a real late round gamble. Tolbert is the same guy, but you just have to pay meaningfully more. So I'm not in on that.
There's one last player that I wanted to make sure we hit on before we go, but it is a DraftKings specific player, and that is Taysom Hill. If you've been following what's going on at Saints camp and in their preseason game, Taysom Hill is rushing, and he's rushing more than he's ever rushed before. I kind of think that they're solving
he might be their second running back.
They're solving the problem at running back with Taysom Hill because they hate Kendre Miller. Jamal Williams, as much as I love him as a person, does not seem like he is the answer at running back. And Alvin Kamara, as much as I dislike him as a person, is even worse of a running back than he is a person, which is saying a lot. So you've got Alvin Kamara there to take the passing work, but he can't run anymore. And you don't have anyone else that they'll play that's a competent runner. And they're showing their cards a little bit in that, like they're lining Taysom Hill up in the backfield at practice a lot. He's lining up as a fullback in front of Kamara. Like
that's what he scored on, right? Was I think a short fullback dive in the preseason.
Yeah. So I'm looking at it as, what if you get 30 or 25% of the carries for the team going on to Taysom Hill, but he's tight end eligible. You've got a disproportionate amount of touchdown equity here too. Like he's going to get a lot of schemed stuff on the goal line. He's probably their best power back right? Like Taysom Hill is probably the goal line back. So if you can get the goal line back, I mean, I know it's for the Saints. I know their O-line's not going to be good. I know they probably are not going to be great. But at his price on DraftKings and the fact that he's tight end eligible.
Tight end eligible, yeah.
Like the fact that he can have a multiple touchdown in a week ceiling, like what was it last season? He had like 4 TDs and 100-something yards. Like he can just drop a 30 or 40 burger from the tight end position. That's pretty good in tournament format best ball. That's going to help you win a lot of weeks. Those playoff pods when you're in there and you're the guy with Taysom Hill and no one else has him, and he just drops a 30 burger on everyone, and you got him at pick 130. You're going to be real happy. So I've been making it a point to get more Taysom Hill. I mean, he's pretty exclusively a guy that I take with 3 total tight ends because I think you got a lot of opportunity for stone zeros with him.
Yes.
He's also very interesting in that you can actually draft him with Juwan Johnson, I believe, and have it not be bad because Juwan Johnson.
They just play different positions. They just literally do not play the same position.
Yeah, you would draft, Kendre with Juwan Johnson.
And Taysom has where Juwan Johnson, it's a lot harder for him to have legitimate flex upside. Like if Juwan Johnson's filling your flex, it's tougher for that to be a really good thing for you. Taysom Hill has legitimate flex upside where he could fill your flex and be the highest scoring, second highest scoring player on your team or something.
Yeah, I think we're in on Taysom Hill. Kendre, I'm not gonna show you where he is on the ranking list, but it's been a tough summer. Did you see the report today?
Yeah.
Dennis Allen's just playing the hits. Everyone's like, oh, remember when he was like, Kendre can't get on the field, and everyone's like, oh my God. And he saw that it got a lot of engagement. He was like, I'm going to say that again. I'm going to say the exact same thing, and it's going to blow up.
It's a say the line Bart at this point for Dennis Allen. He goes, I don't know if Kendre Miller can learn the offensive system because he hasn't been able to practice. Like he's doing this is like a bit.
Yeah, on his he comes to the podium with a notepad for what he wants to talk about with the reporters, and on the notepad he's got scribbled, "Make sure to say something mean about Kendre."
Yeah, it's kind of I don't like it. I mean, he's hurt,
No, he's bullying Kendre. Free Kendre Miller. We all want to be in on Kendre Miller. Dennis Allen's just making that not a reality for us. So we cope by drafting Taysom Hill, who is a good pick. It's not
the problem with Kendre Miller is that I would want him, like if you said Kendre Miller has been released from a team, you don't know which team, he's now going to join a new team based on what you've done this summer, where would you like him to land? I'd be like, oh, the Saints. I don't have any Kamara. So it's like, I don't want him to go to the Cowboys. I don't want to go to the Bengals. No thanks. Like where is this guy going to go that I'm actually going to be excited?
Oh, I want him to go to the Chargers. Actually, that's what I want.
All right.
Could you imagine Kendre Miller with the Jim Harbaugh scheme? That would be fun.
Well, he doesn't know if he can learn that scheme because he's not on the field.
Oh my God. Could you imagine the Jim Harbaugh injury talk about Kendre Miller?
I'm already over the Jim Harbaugh injury talk.
That's a HIPAA violation. I'm not qualified to speak on that.
He wasn't even qualified to relay the information from a doctor. He wasn't qualified. I don't know what you have to. I'm not sure what degree you get to be able to just say words someone else said to you, but apparently there's one out there.
The doctor used a word I don't understand. I'm just not going to repeat it.
Yeah. All right, let's get out of here, guys. We're going to be, as I said, making some more changes to the rankings, so they'll be different than what we've shown, but not dramatically different. But check them out, legendaryupside.com. We update these bad boys every day. And I've got a article coming out. By the time this pod is out, you'll be able to check out this article that I have on the rookie wide receivers. Follow-up research article on kind of rookie wide receivers in best ball, kind of how they're hitting, how they're contributing to these winning best ball teams. They've very much been a part of winning best ball rosters over the years. And then I look at the rookie wide receivers who are still cheap. So I dig into the profiles of the guys still going in the double-digit rounds, which we have a decent amount because it was a deep wide receiver class. So that'll be out. And I've just finished up Breece Hall's legendary upside scenario. That was fun. Put me in a good mood.
I was gonna say, speaking of play the hits, when's the legendary upside article come out?
It's coming out soon. I've got McCaffrey done. I've got Breece done. So those are. I'll be traveling in the future to see the rest of those legendary upside scenarios. That'll be out reasonably soon. Wide receiver article to tide you over till then. Anything to tell the people about over at Roto World's, pal?
This should be posted by then. The Roto World Draft Marathon going on all day Thursday. You can also just go back and watch it. It's fine. Denny and I strong-armed them into doing a best ball draft this year. So even if you were only here for the best ball, we got them to do one. It's already pre-recorded, so I know it happens. And oh my God, I draft Kendre. Other than that, I drafted a banger. They were like, you have to draft Kendre because I had Saints, I think is what happened. And I was like, I don't want to draft Kendre. And they made me draft Kendre. I had Saints stack, but oh my. So other than that, 17 picks, it was a really good team. And 18th round pick doesn't always hit. So I got a good team if you want to go check that out.
Zack, you want to tell the people about the DraftKings sidekick and anything else?
Yeah, after much waiting, we were very eager to get the sidekick available on DraftKings, but we had a little delay with some Mozilla issues. But we've got those resolved now. DraftKings, DraftKings is now you're able to draft on DraftKings with the sidekick. We are DraftKings compatible. And it's not even on the beta version. So if you are a Sidekick subscriber, your normal version of the Sidekick will work on DraftKings. Just make sure you're updated to the most recent version. You can hop in the Discord if you have any questions about that.
Most recent version available at apps.legendaryupside.com/sidekick. You can always get the most recent version there.
And if you're not subscribed yet, it's not too late to go and grab a Sidekick subscription to just kind of close out best ball season. If you're trying to jam in a bunch of volume, especially if you're multi-tabling or doing a bunch of slows for these last couple weeks, I could not imagine doing it without the Sidekick. I've been just crushing volume lately, and my life would be substantially worse without the Sidekick. And it's not even that you're not only getting it for this end of draft season.
It's a full calendar year. That's a big.
If you get this annual sub, you're also getting the playoff best ball tool. I would say
all of next summer.
And all of next summer.
But almost all of next summer. Yeah.
If you plan on playing playoff best ball this season, which I certainly think you should, it is one of my favorite formats, and I think we're very good at it. I would strongly recommend getting the Sidekick purely for that. Even if you're not drafting best ball teams now, it's going to be a banger for playoff best ball. So check that out.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. We're going to be back Friday and talking through some more of the ranking stuff. Davis Maddox is going to hop on with us, talk through some of the kind of the landscape. I'm going to be back. Legendary Sickos we're going to do again this week. And then I'm going to have a podcast actually tomorrow with Blair Andrews talking through some of his recent articles. He's done some really good stuff this summer. So I wanted to touch base with Blair and talk through some of his stuff. So lots more content on the feed for you soon. See you then.